other big headline. It's an all-out war between the executive and the judiciary. Top constitutional officers are trading barbs over the Collegium system of appointing judges and what the powers of the court should be. Once again, it's Vice President Jagdeep Dhankar who has lit the fuse. Last month, while delivering his maiden address to the Rajya Sabha, if you remember, Mr. Dhankar had thrown caution to the wind. He said the parliament's sovereignty must be supreme and reminded the judiciary of its Lakshman Rekha. That had made headlines. They were unprecedented remarks for a vice president, after all. But this time, Mr. Dhankar has gone a step ahead. He has openly accused the judiciary of public posturing and one-upmanship. He says when the top court sent him a message via the Attorney General, he refused to entertain it. Listen in.
अब आज के हालात क्या हैं? वन अपमैनशिप, पब्लिक पोस्टिंग फ्रॉम जुडिशियल प्लेटफॉर्म्स, ये ठीक नहीं है। जब श्रेष्ठ न्यायालय के न्यायाधिपति गण ने अटॉर्नी जनरल को कहा कि हाई कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल अथॉरिटी को एक मैसेज दो, फ्रेंड्स, I have declined to entertain the Attorney General on this point. I cannot be party to emasculate the power of legislature.
Now, don't forget who is saying these words. That's the Vice President of the country, openly blasting the judiciary. But Mr. Dhankar wasn't done yet. He went on to question and criticize what many consider to be the holiest part of the Indian Constitution, the basic structure. Now, the basic structure doctrine is very simple. It empowers the Parliament to amend all parts of the Constitution except the basic structure. The obvious question is, who decides what the basic structure is? Well, that definition has evolved over the years. It includes individual freedoms and secular and federal character of the Constitution, the rule of law, free and fair elections as well. All of this constitutes the basic structure. The Parliament cannot touch this basic structure. But Vice President Dhankar disagrees. He says the basic structure must be decided by the mandate of the people, which according to him is Parliament. Essentially, he's saying Parliament is supreme, the judiciary should mind its business.
1973 के अंदर एक बहुत गलत परंपरा चालू हुई। 1973 में केशवानंद भारती के केस में सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने बेसिक स्ट्रक्चर का आइडिया किया कि पार्लियामेंट कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन अमेंड कर सकती है पर बेसिक स्ट्रक्चर को नहीं। With due respect to the judiciary, I cannot subscribe to this.
And it wasn't just the Vice President. Lok Sabha Speaker Om Birla also waded into the Collegium debate. His remarks weren't as pointed at Mr. Dhankar's, but coming from the Lok Sabha Speaker, they carry a lot of weight. Mr. Birla says he respects the judiciary, but it should follow limits set by the Constitution. Listen in.
संसद और विधान मंडल के अध्यक्ष हमेशा न्यायपालिका का सम्मान करते हैं, उनके अधिकारों का, उनकी स्वतंत्रता का सम्मान करते हैं, लेकिन उसके साथ साथ हमारा यह भी मानना है कि संविधान में जो मर्यादा दी है उस मर्यादा का पालन न्यायपालिका भी करे।
Mr. Chidambaram, good evening and thank you very much for your time here on Mirror Now. Mr. Dhankar,
Yes.
the Vice President of India, has essentially said that the Parliament is supreme and the judiciary should essentially mind its business. Why do you say he's wrong when he says that the Parliament is supreme, sir?
Because that's not the law. The Constitution is supreme. Parliament, the executive, and the judiciary are three wings of the state. All three are governed by specific provisions of the Constitution. They are creatures of the Constitution. How can a creature be supreme than the creator? The creator is the Constitution, which has created the three organs of the government, and therefore the creator is supreme, the Constitution is supreme.
But sir, he talks about the 1973 Kesavanand Bharti verdict, saying that it did set a wrong precedent, that Parliament should be allowed to amend the basic structure of the Constitution. And his dalil or argument is that Parliament represents the will of the people, and therefore the will of the people has to be supreme.
This argument was advanced in 1973 by the then government, which happens to be the Congress government. But the Constitution bench of the Supreme Court said, no, the argument is wrong. You can amend the Constitution, overruling Golaknath, but you cannot amend the basic structure of the Constitution. And they have listed what could be the basic structure of the Constitution. I've given a couple of examples. Suppose tomorrow a government, because it has a majority in the Rajya Sabha and the Lok Sabha, amends the Constitution and deletes list 2 of the 7th schedule of the Constitution. List 2 contains the subjects on which the state legislatures have the exclusive right to make laws. Suppose that list is completely abolished. There are only 2 lists. One is a union list, where Parliament has the exclusive authority to make laws. The other is a concurrent list, where both Parliament and the state legislature can make laws, subject to Article 254, which says if there is a parliamentary law, it will prevail over the state law. Suppose list 2 is omitted. Will the people of the country accept it? Will the states accept it? I can multiply the examples. Suppose tomorrow Parliament repeals Article 29 and Article 30, which protects minority rights. Will the nation accept it? I ask even more specifically, why should I accept such an amendment? Therefore, there are some aspects of the Constitution which are fundamental. They are basic. This is what Nani Palkiwala, who argued Keshavananda Bharati, said. They are essential features of the Constitution which cannot be touched.
Sir, you say that Mr. Dhankar's view should be a warning. I'm quoting you. You say it should be a red alert to the dangers that lie ahead. What did you mean by that tweet, sir?
Well, by the way, I didn't use the word red alert. I said alert. I suppose Mr. Dhankar was speaking as an individual, because as a constitutional authority, he is bound by the law declared by the Supreme Court. Everybody is bound by the law. The highest constitutional authority, as well as the common citizen, are bound by the law declared by the Supreme Court. But that doesn't prevent individuals from expressing their opinion. I assume that Mr. Dhankar was expressing his opinion that he does not accept the Keshavananda Bharati judgment. He's certainly entitled to hold that opinion. In fact, many people in 1973 held that opinion, but changed that opinion after the judgment. Now, what I meant was, if voices like Mr. Dhankar's grows, or they become strident, that the Parliament can amend any part of the Constitution in whatever manner it thinks fit. That view, not Mr. Dhankar, that view is an alert to those who love the Constitution and who want the Constitution intact. We don't want the Constitution to be mauled and disfigured by amendments which will take away basic rights. Suppose tomorrow the Constitution is amended to omit Article 19 of the Constitution, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, freedom to live anywhere in India. If you remove Article 19 of the Constitution, should we accept that? Therefore, I said, the argument that Parliament has the absolute right to amend any part of the Constitution, that view, I'm only pointing out that view. If that view is expressed again and again and again, it's an alert to all those who love the Constitution as it stands today.
Mr. Chidambaram, can I ask you why you say you feel that this is probably his personal view on the matter? I ask you this question because there's a raging debate over the collegium system right now. The judiciary and the executive have been at loggerheads, and the fact also is that Mr. Dhankar is the Vice President of India.
No, I don't know, and I'm guessing here. I believe Mr. Dhankar did not speak as the Vice President of India, because as the Vice President, he is bound by the law declared by the Supreme Court. You kindly see Article 141 of the Constitution. The law declared by the Supreme Court shall be binding throughout the country. Therefore, as an MP, I'm bound by the law declared by the Supreme Court. Every constitutional authority is bound by the law declared by the Supreme Court. So I'm assuming that this is a view held by Mr. Dhankar. He's entitled to hold the view. I don't quarrel with that at all. He's certainly entitled to hold the view. But this view was rejected in 1973. Now 50 years have passed. 50 years down the line, when that is the law repeatedly expressed by the Supreme Court, why are we reopening this debate at this point of time? That is my worry. And anyway, we are not getting into any personal confrontation. It's one view against another view, and I have expressed my view.
Mr. Chidambaram, Mr. Dhankar has also said that the striking down of the NJAC Act in 2015 is unparalleled in the democratic history of the world. These are his exact words. Now, the NJAC was enacted by your government. So why are you not more supportive of the government's stance when it comes to the collegium system?
What do you mean NJAC was enacted by our government? Parliament passed the NJAC. It was one law. There was a constitution amendment and then the NJAC. The constitution amendment was struck down on the ground it violated the basic feature. You can have two views on that. The NJAC, according to me, was a reasonably good law. There were one or two wrinkles which could have been easily ironed out. If I was in charge at that time, the present government is in charge for the last 8.5 years. If I was in charge at that time, I would have moved another bill, removing those wrinkles and making it more acceptable to everybody, including the Supreme Court. Why did the government not make another effort to move another bill on the NJAC? But believe me, I support NJAC. I am not a fan of the collegium system. I say appointments of judges cannot be left to the judges alone. There has to be a wider body, a wider consultation, and I support the NJAC. If the NJAC law was struck down, you can always bring another law. But that doesn't meet the central issue here. The central issue here is, can every part and any part of the Constitution be amended by Parliament? Or are there some parts of the Constitution, some provisions of the Constitution, which are considered basic features, basic structure, which cannot be amended? On that, I believe that there are some basic features of the Constitution which cannot be amended. Among them is Article 14, Article 21. These cannot be amended. If you allow the Parliament to a right to amend these articles, India, as was conceived by the Constitution makers, will be over.
Mr. Chidambaram, we'll leave it there for the moment. Thank you so much for joining us here on Mirror Now and taking our questions. Good to have you on the show.